What would you say is the biggest sin an artist can make? If you said tracing, you're wrong. Or are you? Hello lovely people, it's Sajiri here, and guess who's got a mouthful of stitches? It's me. If you follow me over on Twitter, you would know I recently had surgery, but now I'm getting back into the swing of things. And we are going to start today talking about tracing. You might have heard people say that if you trace in your art, you are a fraud. Can tracing be beneficial? Or is it always wrong? Well, in my opinion, tracing under the right circumstances can be beneficial for learning and time management. Now, before you grab your pitchforks, I'm going to say this straight up. You never trace another artist's work and claim it as your own. Just don't do it, okay? Now that that's out of the way. So the speed paint I've got for you today is one I've set up specifically for this video where, surprise, surprise, obviously I am tracing, at least for a little bit. Anyway, this character is named Malik, and he is one of the main characters from my comic I am working on called Dawnkeeper. So let's get started. Can tracing actually be beneficial to you, or is it always wrong? So in my day job, I work with young children in a school, and tracing is an important step for children in learning when it comes to handwriting, memorizing, and their fine motor skills. I don't know if you've seen a 7-year-old's handwriting, but my god. For my students that are still learning, and especially after coming back from summer break, I often set out worksheets for them that will first have them trace over a letter formation and then write it themselves. I was doing this recently in my class, and this is actually what gave me the idea for this video when I realized that the same can be applied to art. But as someone who occasionally will incorporate tracing in my own work, I can tell you there are a lot of reasons why it doesn't make you a fraud. For one, tracing can be a time-saving tool. It can help you with tricky poses. You can trace your own art to transfer to different mediums. Reuse artworks of your own. I mean, if you sketch something, then draw over it on a new layer to do clean work, you're still tracing your own work there. It can allow experimentation with your art and designs. Ultimately, tracing is a tool and technique in art to allow you to more easily complete certain tasks. Just like using masking tape to cover parts of a canvas while painting could be an important technique in your process. It comes down to what precisely you are doing with your tracing and what the purpose of it is. And speaking of other tools and methods in your art, if you're interested in hearing about other methods for your art, like and subscribe to see more of my videos. Now, have you ever heard anyone say something like, only people who can't draw will trace? But did you know many professionals use tracing in their process? Andy Warhol, Norman Rockwell, and even Picasso incorporated tracing into their artwork. Professional artists working in studios will often paint over photos to create their artworks. But does this make these individuals not an artist? Does it completely disqualify their skill in painting or rendering? Their knowledge of composition? Are they still capable of drawing without tracing? In this drawing of Malik, I used one of Clip Studio Paint's 3D models to create and trace the basic pose I have here. This was done specifically for this video, and in this case I am using it for time saving, but I could still produce the same figure drawing without the model. It would just likely take me much longer. Like, much longer. I'm going to admit something here. I used to really struggle with drawing male bodies. I'd always make them look really stiff and blocky, or too scrawny and feminine, and I'd often just end up finding photos to copy. But copying and tracing never really taught me what I needed to know. There were some things I figured out, like that male bodies tend to be more angular and broader than female bodies, which I am much more used to drawing. But then last year I spent a month of dedicated practice working on different male body shapes and anatomy, which taught me more than tracing ever would. Being a woman, it's easy to use my own body as a reference, but there are differences in male and female anatomy, shapes, bone and muscle definition that I just never considered until I dedicated time to learning to draw a male body without references and tracing. You'll notice that I only used tracing for the basic shape of the body, while I then drew in all the features and muscle definition with the model hidden. This, in my opinion, is a perfectly valid form of tracing in your art, but it's important that you at least learn the fundamentals instead of relying purely on tracing. And this is where we're going to discuss the downside of tracing. Frankly, tracing all the time can make you reliant on it, I mean, when I switched to Clip Studio Paint and realized the convenience of using these 3D models, I started to feel too reliant on not only tracing, but digital tools as well. I started to question if I was really even an artist. And I was telling myself that if I didn't use these things, I wouldn't be able to produce art at all. Thanks, imposter syndrome. So I started doing daily sketches in a sketchbook, as well as trying to do a lot of digital sketches without ever using any of the models. And this gave me some realizations. While tracing can allow you to learn some things if used correctly, dedicated intentional practice and observation is more valuable than simply tracing over something that you can't do. Learning and study, like any subject, involves focused mental attention. Think of a classroom, for example. Imagine you're working on a math problem. Paying attention to the method for solving and working out the solution is going to teach you how to do it again in the future, while simply copying down someone else's answers without knowing how to get that answer isn't really going to teach you anything. If you're going to trace something for the purpose of learning, you need to pay attention to what you are doing that is different to what you were doing without it. And not only that, but relying on tracing everything could stifle your creativity if you're only ever looking for suitable references and poses instead of learning to express your ideas yourself. Now, another downside of tracing is the very obvious that I started off with. If you trace another's artwork with the intent of claiming it as your own, that is plagiarism. Not only is it unfair and disrespectful to the original artists, but if it's paid work, it's also incredibly disrespectful to your own clients. Maybe you've heard of Butch Hartman, the creator of Danny Phantom. He's been caught out in tracing scandals before, and there was some big controversy a while ago where it came out he was paid $200 for a commission, and he was found to just be tracing existing fan art. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty annoyed if I paid someone a few $100s to find out that they've essentially just given me someone else's artwork. So what are some good practices for tracing, and what should you avoid? Well, once again, do not trace another artist's work. Seriously, just don't. At least don't share it publicly. I think everyone at some point has just traced some existing artwork, personal use or fun, and I don't really see a problem with that. You need to make sure you learn the fundamentals instead of relying purely on tracing, because while it might teach you something, it's not going to teach you everything. And I think the biggest thing, especially if you are learning, try to keep it to a minimum to force yourself to learn without it. If you're tracing a face, just go over the basic shape and mark down where the eyes, the nose, and the mouth should be, and then draw them yourself. So did you find this helpful? Or maybe you just completely disagree with everything I've said here. Whatever it is, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. Now, if you're interested to see how else I've used tracing in my art, you can see my video linked here. Mocha, this is my recording, not you.